go.
Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Councillor Ruth McEwen, Chair of Adult Social Care, Children's Services and Education Committee. I would like to welcome you to the Adult Social Care, Children's Services Education Committee, which has been held online as permitted by the Coronavirus Act of 2020. The public and the press can observe the meeting by following the link on our website. Agenda papers, including the update pack, have been published on the Council's website. To help those observing the meeting, we will be presenting some information on slides as we go through the agenda. Before we start this evening, councillors attending will be asked to introduce themselves. This is for the benefit of the public and also to ensure that all are in attendance as expected and also that they can hear and speak to the meeting. Members have also been asked to make me aware if they wish to speak on an item in advance, and you can also notify me when you wish to speak in the chat section of the screen and then wait to be called. When not speaking, please will councillors put their microphones on mute. When called to speak, please unmute your microphone and pause briefly to allow for the slight time delay. It is possible that a loss of connection may happen, but as long as we still have 3 members in the meeting, we will be quiet. And as ever, we're at the mercy of individuals' broadband, and it is possible that loss of connection may happen. However, as long as we've got 3 members in the meeting, we'll be quiet. I shall now do a roll call of councillors. As I say your name, please can you introduce yourself to the meeting? So I am Councillor Ruth McEwen, Chair of Adult Social Care, Children's Services and Education Committee, and I represent Church Ward. I will call on all of the members of the committee alphabetically. Councillor David Absalom.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor David Absalom, Redlands Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Balston.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Isabel Balston, Maple Durham Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Challenger.
Councillor Liam Challenger, Cates Grove Ward and Vice Chair of this committee.
Thank you. Councillor Grasshoff.
Chair, Councillor Grasshoff has stood down. She's causing a by-election.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hoskin.
Hi, I'm Graham Hoskin, Councillor for Norcott and Lead Councillor for Health, Wellbeing and Sport.
Councillor Jones.
Good evening, Chair. I am Tony Jones, Lead Member for Adult Social Care and Councillor for Redlands Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Khan. Not sure, is Councillor Khan here this evening? No. Okay. Councillor McKenna.
Well, I'm off mute. Councillor McKenna from Whitley Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Connell, I understand will be arriving a little bit later this evening. So we move on to Councillor Pearce.
Evening, Chair. Councillor Ashley Pearce, Lead for Education and struggling with my voice.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson. No, not Councillor Robinson. Okay. Councillor Sakali.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Shakala, Councillor for Caversham. Oh, you can't see me. Apologies, I didn't take the thing off my camera. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Terry.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Terry, Lead Member for Children's Services and Minster Ward.
Thank you. And Councillor White.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Rob White, Park Ward Councillor and leader of the Green Group of Councillors.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. I would also like to introduce you to the officers who are in attendance tonight. If I read out the names for you, we have Deborah Glassbrook, who's Executive Director of Children's Services, Education, Early Help and Social Care for Brighter Futures for Children.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I won't repeat all of that, Councillor McEwen. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you.
We've got Corinne Dishington. So would it be easier if you introduce yourself? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Good evening, everybody. I'm Corinne Dishington from Brighter Futures for Children. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Anna Batty.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Yes, Anna Batty from Brighter Futures for Children. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kirsten Carr.
Hi, yes, Kirsten Carr, Strategic Lead for Early Help, Brighter Futures for Children.
Thank you. And Shona Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Shona Douglas. I'm the Executive Director for Social Care and Health with Reading Borough Council.
Thank you. And Melissa Wise.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm Melissa Wise. I'm the Assistant Director for Commissioning in Adult Social Care.
Thank you. Nina George.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. I'm Nina George. I'm the Customer Relations and Information Governance Manager for the Council.
Apologies, then mispronouncing that. And Kate Reynolds.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kate Reynolds. I'm Director of Education at Brighter Futures for Children. Thank you.
Thanks, very good. We also have Jenny Hazel and Richard Woodford are the committee services officers taking minutes of the meeting and producing the live broadcast. We also have Rachel Spencer along with this evening. He was Chief Executive of Reading Voluntary Action, and I know Rachel has brought some guests. I understand we've got Carly Newman, Sam Lloyd, Alison Brickley, Ryan, and I'm not entirely sure, I need to double check Ryan's name, and John Orr. So maybe if Rachel just wants to introduce herself and we can meet the during the presentation. Is Rachel not here just yet? No. Okay. Right, thank you. Right, okay then, thank you very much. With introductions out the way, let's turn to the agenda. The agenda papers are being published on the council website and the Modern Gov app. For voting on the items of this meeting, I will ask, are we content to proceed, and pause for 5 seconds. I will take silence to mean that all members are agreed. Where members indicate they're not content to proceed on that basis, then I'll carry out a roll call and ask members to confirm whether they are for or against the recommended action. Okay, declarations of interest. I have not been notified of any interest to be declared, so I will pause for a moment to allow any councillor to state if they have an interest and to declare the nature of that interest.
Chair.
Sorry, yeah.
Chair, it's Councillor Balsden. Just in case I speak with my chair of governor's hat of the Avenue Special School, I just want to say that it's a personal but non-prejudicial interest, because there aren't any decisions being made that I would be biased over. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Balsden. Thank you. Agenda item number 2, the minutes of ACE committee from the meeting held on the 20th of January 2021. Can I is everybody happy to agree that it's a correct record?
Agreed.
That's great, thank you. Agenda item 3, we have the minutes of the Health and Wellbeing Board, which have just been included from information. And moving on, agenda item 4, petitions. We haven't received any petitions. So we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is questions from councillors and members of the public. And we haven't received any questions from councillors, but I've received 3 questions from a member of the public. The questions are from Mr. Rob Bishop. So Mr. Bishop, I'll ask if you can please press 6 on your phone to unmute yourself, then please go ahead and ask your first question. Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome to the committee.
Okay.
Would you like to ask your first question?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Pearce. My first question is, with reference to my attached note, can the Council please provide an update on the 2013 pupil product ratio used to calculate new pupil places, considering that Brighter Futures for Children recognised back in 2019 that the formula it was using then may not be representative of Reading and that a survey may be needed?
Thank you, Mr Bishop. Now, you may have noticed that Councillor Pearce is struggling a little bit today with a very sore throat, so rather than him struggle on, I'm going to attempt to answer these questions. So please bear with me because I'm reading this. So thank you very much for your question. If I read through here, so Brighter Future for Children Performance and Data Team has adopted the Cognizant model to calculate pupil yield for forecasting pupil demand, but it's not as simple as just using the table, because to calculate pupil yield as such, there are factors such as social housing, deprivation, etc., that may influence the calculation. Now, included in the information pack, you will have received a basic table, but the Cognizant ratios are in line with those quoted from other local authorities, but are not in line with RBC pupil product ratio for new housing. Reading Borough Council quoted in the paper. Reading Borough Council's acting planning manager, Julie Williams, has confirmed that the SPD was adopted in 2013 prior to the council using the community infrastructure levy to secure mitigation funding from the development to go towards the infrastructure projects, including education provision. Therefore, this part of the SPD is out of date and it has not been replaced to date. There is some information here about point 4 in the paper, which refers to the document Brighter Futures for Children, School Place Planning, which dated 16th of June 2019, states BFC is considering commissioning a housing yield figure survey. The extract from the attached School Place Planning report dated 16th of July 2019, presented to ACE on 19th of July 2019, states that BFFC is considering commissioning a housing yield figure survey given through the amount of new build homes, including social housing, because although housing yield data is taken into account, the formula is based on national pupil yield, which may not be representative of Reading. The housing yield survey was not carried out. The new guidance from DfE will include guidance on how local authorities should calculate housing yield, which will be factored into the SCAP 2021 return to the DfE and the related place planning report. As this planning application has not been passed, there is no date for the commencement or completion of each phase of any potential build. The SCAP 2021 submitted to the DfE in July will provide a forecast of the primary population of the next 5 years and be factored into school place planning. It is worth noting here that Reading's past accuracy in predicting the number of school places needed for the children in the borough. In 2019, Brighter Futures for Children received a letter from Lord Agnew and the Department of Education praising the accuracy of both primary and secondary level in predicting the level of school places needed across 1 and 3 year period.
Thank you very much. May I respond to that?
Yes, I was going to say, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Firstly, thank you for the information telling me that the 2013 report is out of date and that since then a survey has not been carried out. However, I would like to point out that even using the updated table that you provided, the calculation for the proposed development that I referred to in my question 2 and question 3 comes out at 74 new primary school places for pupils, not the 60 that the development was claiming. And the decision on this proposed development is, I believe, at the end of April. So I would urge, please, the council to look at those numbers again.
Right, thank you. That point will be noted. Thank you. I just want to see that if we have Councillor Pearce. Okay, Councillor Pearce has indicated that we can ask planning to do so. Thank you. Would you like to go to your second question, Mr. Bishop?
Yes, thank you. My second question is, with reference to the example of planning application 210018 in my attached note, does the council agree that there will be a shortfall in primary school places regardless of what multiplier is used?
Right, thank you. Again, I'm going to read the response from Councillor Pearce. Local authorities are not required to submit a SCAP return in July 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The last full school place planning forecast was completed in July 2019. The extract, which is included in the response from the SCAP commentary submitted to the DFE in July 2019, refers to the North primary planning. And has that information been included for you?
Yes, thank you. I have read the enclosed information, but yeah. I would like to ask a supplementary question about it, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. My point is that the answer that has been provided is generic to north of the river and is not, unfortunately, a direct answer to my question. And I point out that there is an error by the developer in the number of new school places that I referred to just a few minutes ago, and also in the number of surplus school places. And the latter, which my numbers are as of the end of this month, do not seem to tie up with your numbers. But even using your own numbers, this indicates only a 2.4% surplus capacity for the reception year, which is insufficient given the 5% safety margin you require. Do you not agree that there may be a shortfall after all, and this needs to be taken up with the planning committee?
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. If you bear with me a little bit, sorry, we cannot plan new we cannot plan new school places for a planning application. So, please bear with me. We cannot plan school places for a planning application that has not passed. If the application is passed, then the new information will be added to the planning data we have to inform future planning. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. So would you like to move on to your third question?
Thank you. With reference to the example in my attached note, Emma Green Primary School is next door to the proposed development. Classroom windows will be open to aid ventilation because of COVID, and pupils will have to put up with 5 years of construction fumes, dust and noise, a health hazard and detrimental to their learning. Can you please explain what mitigation measures will be acceptable to the council, and if none can be provided, will this committee make their objection to the proposed development known to the planning officers?
Thank you, Mr. Bishop, for your question. Again, I'll read the response from Councillor Pearce. The planning application for this site is yet to be determined by the council, and the impacts of potential disturbance during construction will need to be considered as part of that process. Where a major development that is otherwise acceptable is to be granted planning permission, the council would generally expect a construction method statement to ensure that the impacts on neighbouring uses are mitigated in terms of matters such as noise, dust and vibration to be secured by the planning condition. This could involve particular solutions for the circumstances, such as temporary fencing or netting. The council will also expect the applicant to submit an S61, Control of Pollution Act 1974, which will mean they have to follow best practice to control the noise and the vibration. However, as we know from other sites, dust, noise and vibration will not be removed completely. As the site is an open site, it will be harder to control these impacts. So we would expect the applicant to manage the residents and the school's expectations. The council would expect developers to liaise with the school and residents, the school and residents about issues and particular noisy, dusty works, and would expect the applicant to look at offering quiet periods in the day, taking into account the school day. This is something the council would typically look to include in the S61. The above is standard practice for all sites within Reading, and the council will certainly ensure that is implied in particular to large development sites with sensitive uses nearby and sites with longer timescales. Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Bishop?
I do, Chair, and thank you. I'm glad to hear that the council acknowledges the impact on the school, but I'm concerned that the actions such as the construction method statement and the S61 is being put off for the future and not being considered now as part of the planning application decision when it really matters. And I would also like to point out that the liaison and consultation that you referred to has never actually taken place between the school nor the residents. So I would therefore please urge the council to treat this with some urgency. And may I finally say thank you, Chair and Councillor Pearce, for allowing me to speak.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you then. Moving on then. Then we're now moving on to agenda item number 6, which is decision book references, and we've not received any decision book references. So we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is Grown Up in Reading. And we have a report. We have a presentation, pardon me, from Rachel Spencer, who's from Chief Executive of Reading Voluntary Action. Now, I've just had a message that understand that Rachel is present but struggling with sound. I don't know if Rachel's managed to get on. Okay. Rachel, can you hear? It's Richard. I don't know if you've managed to get Rachel.
Yeah, hi Chair. Yeah, I mean the invite has gone out to Rachel and she's accepted it. I don't think there's I'm afraid a lot I can do with trying to get her to join the meeting, I'm afraid.
There's an email from her. She sent an email saying she can't access. Sorry, it's Kirsten Carter.
Yeah.
There was an email to say that she couldn't access. They can't access the meeting.
Okay.
The link's not working for them.
Is it possible that they've not got the right link? They can only view.
Yeah, Rachel's managed to speak in the chat. Yeah, Richard, would you be able to resend the link and then?
No, I can't, I'm afraid. They've definitely been sent the right link and I've sent them instructions on how to join. So, you know, there's only one link I can send them. So I know that they've done. And I see that Alison Brickley has managed to join. So Alison, I know, has been sent exactly the same link as everybody else. So
I'm just trying to talk them through getting in now.
Excellent, thank you.
I mean, we could, if there's technical problems, and if there's, unless there's somebody else to the presentation, we could move on and go to agenda item 8 and then go back to 7.
Good idea, Chair.
Is everybody happy with that? So we'll move on just temporarily and we'll come back to 7 afterwards. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so agenda item 7, sorry, get my things. It's agenda item 8, which is Children in Care Sufficiency Strategy, which is a report to be presented by Corinne Dishington.
Thank you, Councillor McKeown. It's actually the Childcare Sufficiency Assessment that I'm presenting this evening. I think it's the title, the correct report is attached. So it's the Childcare Sufficiency Assessment for 2020-2021. The report has been distributed to everybody, and it's within the meeting notes for this evening. I think the main thing to say about the assessment this year is the level of difficulty there was in collating and providing the information, the data and the analysis, because of the obvious problems that childcare has gone through in the last 12 months. However, the main findings from the report were that there's no overall sufficiency issues in Reading, although it may not be in the areas of parental preference, but there are sufficient places for all not to force to access childcare in Reading, and for school-aged children to access after-school clubs and breakfast clubs. The areas to monitor for Brighter Futures is the town centre and Whitley area, to ensure that the childcare market and sufficiency of places matches the new housing developments, of which there's a number of planning applications. So we need to work with Reading Borough Council planning area to ensure that there's sufficient childcare within those areas as the developments come on board. And the quality of the childcare provision in Reading is very high. We have 90% of our providers who are either good or outstanding, as graded by Ofsted. Obviously the inspections have been halted over the last 12 months, apart from those inspections that were considered to be urgent for safeguarding reasons. We also had a question that Councillor Pearce raised about the tax-free childcare component, which parents can access up to £2,000 through the HMRC. Unfortunately, the local authority is not given data as to the take-up, so we can't advise on that. However, we can reassure councillors that providers promote and market the benefit to parents widely through the take-up of the daycare places. So that's not the entitlement places, that's the daycare places. And I would ask if there were perhaps any questions, Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Councillor Terry, did you want to speak?
No, not really. I think the report speaks for itself. Obviously, there are concerns about the operation of early years during COVID, and also the sort of numbers and funding going forward. But this report is specifically a statutory report that requires us to do this analysis, and it's based on the best information available to Brighter Futures at the moment. And so I think Ms. Corrin has covered all of the relevant information. As she said, she'd be happy to answer any more detailed technical questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Terry. Councillor White, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, yes, please, Chair. Thank you. And yeah, it's a very interesting and detailed report. And I know it's looking backwards, but I guess it would be handy just to get a little bit looking forwards from the council with the tough year that everyone's had. Nurseries have had a particularly tough year with the pandemic and everything, and there were already serious concerns about the funding of nursery places and how viable some of the nurseries in Reading are under those funding arrangements. So I don't know if we can hear a little bit about the sort of view on the resilience of nurseries in Reading and any support that can be offered going forward to any nurseries who might be struggling.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Terry, would you like to respond, or Corinne, would you like to respond to that one?
I'd like the officer to respond to that, please.
Thank you.
So the council has had various schemes of support over the last 12 months that have been open to nurseries to apply for, which includes holidays on business rates plus grants that they could apply for. The entitlement funding from the DFE was paid for the summer term last year, and also in the autumn term providers were funded to at least their August 19 funded places. So if they had less children than they had in autumn 19, they were funded to that level. From January for the spring term, the funding has been on actual numbers. However, the government have committed to a top up if the uptake of places increases through the term, and that is up to 85%. So those are the measures that have been put in place. I would say the resilience of the sector has been quite incredible. It is fairly fragile, and the entitlement funding has been increased from the 1st of April by 6p for 3 and 4 year old places and by 8p an hour for 2-year-old places. There is a new paper that's been provided by the government, launched, called The Best Start for Life, of which there's a review of funding that is going to be put to Treasury before the spending review, which is asking for or working out additional funding for the early years sector across the piece. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. All right, I haven't received any other indications to speak from councillors. Are all councillors happy to note and endorse recommended actions in the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Right, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, moving on to, do we know how did Rachel Spencer manage to get in to the link?
I don't believe they have.
I'm in.
Oh.
Oh. Oh, thank you.
It's just me though. It's just me, and I have no idea how I did it, to be honest.
Oh well, it's nice for you. Nice to have you here. Are you all right to carry on then?
Yeah. I mean, is it? Yeah. Okay. Well.
I mean, we can. Should we move on? I mean, the other option is we move to agenda item 9 and come back and when everybody else has managed to get in.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, but
no, not a problem at all. Okay, so agenda item number 9, which is One Reading Children's and Young People's Partnership Early Strategy, and we have Anna Batty and Kirsten Carr to introduce the report.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen, and we'll just Kirsten's just going to share the slides for you.
Thank you.
And then we'll make a start. Brilliant, thank you, Kirsten. So yes, thank you. My name's Anna Batty, and myself and colleague Kirsten are going to take you through the strategy, the headlines of the strategy. So to confirm, as you can see, this is One Reading partnership strategy for early help. So the One Reading Partnership, Children and Young People's Partnership, has a board made up of strategic leads from across the children, young people and families workforce here in Reading, and they'll be taking responsibility for the implementation of the strategy, as well as responsibility for overseeing the delivery and impact of the work streams that Kirsten will tell you a bit more about later on in the presentation. So just in terms of the timeframes for the strategy, we really have acknowledged the unique year that we've just had, and both in terms of the coming year and years to come. So wanted to keep this strategy quite focused, just to reflect the uniqueness of our previous year and those going forward. Thank you, Kirsten. So the strategy includes what we've established what we've achieved since we established the One Reading Children and Young People's Partnership, and certainly that's included a consistent focus on early help. The strategy also recognises the work to date in delivering a shared understanding of a trauma-informed approach, as well as our commitment and ambition for the future. And it also includes some of what we've achieved in terms of our multi-agency responses to families early in the life of both the needs of children, but also in terms of ages through our One Reading Partnership Hub, which is a multi-agency group supporting professionals working with families to take a whole family approach. Thank you, Kirsten. So some of the initiatives that we're building on for this current strategy. It recognises the work we've undertaken to date and builds upon the evidence of impact. So you'll see on the slide in front of you some of the work that we've done together across the partnership. And over on the right hand side where you can see the orange circles, they're our responses to some particular areas around COVID-19. So for example, the Moving On, Moving Up programme is a collaboration between Brighter Futures for Children, our schools and the Violence Reduction Unit. And it responded to concerns raised at the board in terms of children's transitions from primary to secondary schools during the pandemic. So together we identified 85 children, 83 of those children who were invited took part and 71 of them completed the programme. And just as an example of the impact of those children, of which there were 16 that had received a fixed term exclusion in primary school, only 3 of them received a fixed term exclusion following the programme. So next slide, please, Kirsten. So the strategy is aimed at all those working with children, young people and families in Reading. We did want to try and keep it as readable and relevant as possible, which is not always easy with a strategy, but keeping it focused. It includes a definition of early help. And that was something that came through our self-assessment from last year, that whilst there was a good understanding of what we mean when we say by early help, we really needed to push that on and move that across a greater reach across the workforce. So we're really clear in the strategy that early help is a collaborative approach. It's not a single agency or single provision response, really emphasising that partnership and working together. It also includes some of the national evidence base around improved outcomes, reduced need and the reduced to high cost service when we intervene early in children's lives. Thank you, Kirsten. So the strategy incorporates the vision that the board have worked on, that every child, young person and family receives the right help at the right time and at the right place, and both Reading as a place as well as communities, and includes the aims that have been agreed and the partners have signed up to in terms of improving outcomes, reducing those high cost services and building resilient communities with a thriving voluntary sector. Thank you, Kirsten. So the board has agreed a local consensus, and that's really, and as you can see on the slide, that's on the left hand side, we've got a visual for that, which sets out the expectations of not only how we'll work together, but how we'll work with families. It includes the aims of the partnership, as you can see, as well as that underpin principle of being trauma informed. And for this strategy, we've included a definition, the agreed definition of becoming a trauma-informed and responsive community, as well as the expectations, as I say, of how we'll work together and the impact for families. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Would any councillors?
Sorry, I think.
Oh,
Kirsten. I wonder if Kirsten, are you on mute?
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, councillor.
No, hang on. There we go.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. They've just got a few more slides to rattle through.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. We were aiming for a brief strategy document in the hope that people will read it. So we've just focused on some headline data and needs analysis within the strategy. And we've included some contextual and demographic data as it relates to children and young people, some education data with a particular focus on early years development and the attainment gap, for vulnerable children and exclusion and attendance. Some data relating to young people and health, with a focus on emotional wellbeing and mental health, and the impact and our concerns about the future impact of the pandemic. The data and the areas of our continued concern as a partnership have informed the priorities for the next 2 years. So we have 3 priority areas for the early help strategy, which are under 5s, young people and adolescent risk, and emotional wellbeing and mental health. And there are 3 partnership work streams established to drive and oversee the delivery in those areas. And there are cross-cutting areas of focus in each of these in line with our One Reading principles. So focusing on embedding a trauma-informed approach, co-production with children, young people and families, and improving our data and knowledge. The idea then is that the partnership strategy brings together the shared accountability for driving the partnership delivery and demonstrating impact in all of those 3 areas, which will be measured by our key performance indicators, which are attached at the end of the strategy, as well as through some of the softer outcome measures, which will be agreed within each of the 3 work streams. So the key priority areas, just very briefly, sort of are under 5s, respond to our highest areas of concern. So they're focused on the early years development and also in addressing the spike that we've seen in non-accidental injuries in unborn and newborn babies. And for adolescents, for young people, the focus and the priority is very much about preventing and our response, our partnership response to child exploitation and to youth violence and preventing youth crime. And minimising school exclusion is a key priority going forward. So we're going in the right direction with that, but we know it's so fundamental to helping as well with preventing exploitation and youth violence and those other risks and challenges that young people are facing. And then the consistent approaches to emotional wellbeing and mental health work stream is very much focused on embedding the trauma-informed and restorative approach across Reading and on developing a well-communicated emotional wellbeing and mental health offer. Now, the offer, a lot of the work around emotional wellbeing and mental health takes place on a much wider geographical footprint, so via the Berkshire West partnerships. But we want to make sure there's that clear focus on how we're communicating that offer to young people in Reading. And we're also have been concerned very much, particularly recently, particularly this year, with the impact of COVID in terms of that having an impact on young people who are entering acute services because of their mental health and because of eating disorders. So those are our key priority areas, and the early help strategy clearly links to a number of other strategies, both on, as I've just said, on a local Reading level, but also on that wider geographical footprint. And the next steps for the strategy is to be shared at the relevant boards and partnerships to ensure that continued alignment of plans where we need it to be aligned. And I think that's it. Thank you.